My name is Sable Hartwell. And at 70 years old, I thought I understood the shape of love, quiet, steady, forgiving. I had spent most of my life feeding others first through my catering business and later through small acts that nobody noticed. I liked it that way. Or at least I used to. That Christmas Eve in Savannah felt warmer than most. I arrived at my daughter's house just after noon, carrying boxes wrapped in gold paper and a tin of cinnamon cookies I had baked the night before. Leora met me at the door in her red dress and tense smile. "Please, Mom, just don't move anything. Everything has to look professional. Mateo's business partner will be here later." So I didn't move anything. I just offered to help. While she arranged the roast lamb, I peeled carrots, folded napkins, and tied ribbons around the wine glasses. The house smelled like rosemary and orange peel. The children, Naya and Hugo, ran in and out of the kitchen, breathless with excitement. For a while, I allowed myself to believe we were a family again. When the food was ready, Leora dimmed the lights and told everyone to sit. The table gleamed with silverware I had given her as a wedding gift years ago. I waited until everyone else had served themselves before reaching for the carving knife. Leora's hand came down on my wrist. Her tone was smooth, rehearsed. "You didn't pay for anything tonight, Mom," she said, smiling at the others. "So you don't deserve even the leftovers." The sound of forks stopped. Mateo stared at his plate as if it could save him. Naya blinked confused, her fork frozen in midair. The room went terribly still. I stood there, the knife trembling in my hand. My throat burned, but no words came. I had brought gifts for everyone, folded napkins into stars, cooked beside her for hours, and somehow I had become a guest unworthy of her table. I set the knife down and folded my hands in my lap. "Enjoy your meal," I said softly. My voice did not shake. Inside, something cold and deliberate began to take shape. By morning, I knew exactly what her pride would cost her. The drive home was almost silent, except for the turn signal clicking in the dark. Savannah's streets were empty, the gas lamps throwing long shadows over the oaks. I kept both hands steady on the wheel, even as my fingers trembled. My daughter's voice, so polite, so sharp, still echoed in my head. "You didn't pay for anything, Mom." When I reached my house, the porch light flickered, like it had been waiting up for me. Inside, I didn't take off my coat. I went straight to the desk in the corner, where an old leather ledger waited. I had started it when I opened my catering business 40 years ago. Over the years, it had become more than bookkeeping, it was memory-proof confession. I opened it to the middle, where the neat rows of ink told the story of my generosity better than words ever could. Tuition Savannah State. Leora Vale, $12,000. Business loan cover, $25,000 forgiven. Mortgage cosign insurance, premium, emergency card payments. The list went on, page after page. 8 years ago, after Leora's husband died, she had called me crying about bills about the business she couldn't manage alone. I drove over that same night with soup and a plan. I became her silent partner, letting her take the credit while I kept the company alive behind the scenes. "Mom, you saved me," she'd said once, hugging me in the kitchen. I'll never forget this. She did forget. Or maybe she decided remembering was inconvenient. I traced my finger down the column of expenses, the numbers smudged by time. There were gifts for the children, repairs on their roof. Money slipped into her account before Christmas each year. My life written out in ink, acts of love, disguised as transactions. The clock struck 11. Somewhere nearby, a train horn cried low and far. I closed the ledger and rested my hand on the cover. My palm left a faint print of warmth on the cold leather. "I paid for her life," I whispered into the quiet room. "And now I'll stop." Outside, the street was still and waiting, as if it knew something inside me had finally closed for good. The house was too quiet. Even the clock seemed afraid to tick. I walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and turned on the vanity light. Its pale glow caught every line on my face. 70 years of working, waiting, forgiving. My reflection looked like someone I had met but never really known. "You've had enough," I told her. The words sounded foreign at first, but steady. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the names I had spent years relying on only for emergencies. Tonight counted as one. "Ivo Serrano," I said aloud before pressing call. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm from sleep. "Sable, it's almost midnight. Are you all right?" "I'm fine," I said, too calm for what I meant. "I need to cancel every cosign I've made for my daughter's accounts. Every one of them." A pause. "That includes the mortgage and the business renewal. All of it." He hesitated, then softened. "You sure you don't want to think on this until after the holidays?" "I've been thinking on it for 15 years, I said. "Prepare the revocation papers in the morning. I'll sign before noon." He knew better than to argue. "I'll have them ready, Sable." "You deserve peace. Peace." I ended the call before I could cry. Next was Eleni Duarte, my banker. She answered with the professional tone she'd used with me for decades. "Good evening, Mrs. Hartwell. Everything all right? I need to freeze all automatic transfers to my daughter's account. The monthly deposits, the insurance payments, everything." Eleni paused, pen scratching softly. "That's quite a change. Do you want them suspended or fully terminated?" "Terminated," I said. "Effective tomorrow morning. I'll file the request immediately. Sable, you've been helping her for years." "May I ask what happened?" I looked at myself in the mirror again. The lines under my eyes, the steadiness of my jaw. I finally realized she thought the help was hers. By right. It isn't. Eleni exhaled, quiet, but understanding. "Understood. I'll confirm by 9. "Thank you, Eleni." When the call ended, I stood for a moment staring at my reflection. My heartbeat was slow, even clean. 15 minutes to end. 15 years of quiet servitude. I turned off the light, unlocked the door, and stepped into a colder, freer night. The sky was still gray when I stepped outside. Savannah's air carried that damp winter chill that never quite turns to frost. Church bells rang faintly from the cathedral downtown, marking the start of Christmas morning. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing anywhere, wasn't baking, wasn't pretending everything was fine. I drove toward the bank with both hands steady on the wheel. The streets were nearly empty, just a few shopkeepers lifting shutters, and the soft rustle of Spanish moss over the road. When I parked, the city felt like it was holding its breath. Inside the downtown branch, a single desk lamp burned. Eleni Duarte stood up when she saw me. She looked younger than usual, without her usual crowd of clients, just a tired smile and a red scarf. "You weren't kidding about coming in today," she said, unlocking her office door. "I don't wait well," I replied. She set the papers in front of me, already stamped. "Here's the transfer termination form, the insurance beneficiary removal, and the rental authorization you requested. Once you sign, everything stops immediately." Her voice was careful, but her eyes were kind. I took the pen and signed the first page without hesitation. My handwriting shook a little, but not from doubt. "Do you remember I said when I first added Leora's name to these accounts?" Eleni nodded. "You said it was temporary, just until she found her footing." "She never did," I murmured. "I just kept extending the rope." She slid the last page toward me. "You're cutting it now." "I am." I signed the final line. The sound of the pen on paper was softer than I expected, like air releasing from a sealed room. Eleni gathered the forms, stacked them neatly. "It's done, Sable. Merry Christmas." I smiled, a small one, the kind that doesn't need witnesses. "It is, isn't it?" Outside, the sun was starting to lift over the rooftops, washing the city in pale gold. I stopped at a small cafe on the corner, ordered coffee and toast, and sat by the window. No family, no noise, no debt disguised as love. Just the steady warmth of a cup in my hands. For the first time in years, I ate slowly, and it was enough. By the afternoon of December 26th, Savannah had already gone back to its ordinary rhythm shoppers, exchanging gifts, lights coming down, people pretending nothing had changed. For most, it hadn't. But for my daughter, the season was about to take a different turn. The first call came while I was trimming the rosemary bush outside my kitchen window. The ringtone echoed through the quiet yard, sharp and insistent. I wiped my hands on my apron before answering. "Mom?" Leora's voice burst through, thin with panic. "Something's wrong with my card. It was declined at the grocery store." They said the bank froze the line. I kept my tone even. "That sounds inconvenient. Maybe check your accounts, you handle things so well." "I did check. Mateo says it might be some technical issue, maybe because of the holidays. But I can't buy anything, not even milk. Can you call your banker friend and see what's going on?" I leaned against the counter, watching the light drift through the kitchen window. "I'm sure you and Mateo can sort it out. You've always been independent." There was a beat of silence before she spoke again, her voice breaking at the edge. "Mom, this isn't funny. We have the rent due in a few days." I didn't remind her that she hadn't paid that rent in 8 years, not once. "I'm sure you'll figure it out," I said softly. "You're resourceful when you need to be." Before she could answer, I ended the call and set the phone face down. The sound of the dial tone felt like closure. Later that evening, I imagined their living room, the tension thick between them. Mateo pacing, tapping his phone against his palm. Leora snapping, trying to hide her fear behind authority. "Maybe your mother did something," he'd say. She wouldn't. She'd insist, then hesitate. At least I don't think she would. Their world was beginning to tilt, just slightly. The bills they never read would soon speak louder than I ever had. I stepped back into the garden where the rosemary swayed in the cool wind. I hummed a faint carol, one I hadn't sung since my husband died. The melody felt different now, steady, unshaken. Justice, I thought, doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits until the world goes quiet enough to hear it. By the third day after Christmas, the sky hung low over Savannah, heavy, with a color that never decided if it wanted to be gray or blue. I had just finished washing the breakfast dishes when someone knocked 3 quick, desperate knocks that rattled the glass in the door. When I opened it, Leora stood there, clutching a folder of papers against her chest. Her hair was unbrushed, her eyes red. "Mom, please, you have to help me." She stepped inside without waiting for me to answer, dropping the papers on my table. Letters spilled everywhere, bank notices, cancellation forms, insurance statements, all addressed to her. They froze everything, she said breathlessly. The bank, the rent agreement, even the insurance for the kids. I called Elaine's office, but they said the authorization came from you. Tell me this is a mistake. I pulled out a chair and sat. "It's no mistake." Her face went slack. You can't just do that. You know how much we depend, how much the kids." 8 years, I interrupted. "That's how long you've depended on me. Rent, insurance, school fees, even your groceries. You never noticed because you never asked." She stared at me, shaking her head. "That's not true. Mateo and I reached for the leather ledger on the counter and set it gently between us. The pages opened on their own, creased from use. "Read," I said. Her eyes moved down the list, from the tuition I paid to the business loan I covered to the monthly transfers she thought came from her husband's savings. The color drained from her face. It was all you." "It was," I said quietly. "You built your independence on money that didn't belong to you. You took my kindness as debt, not love." Leora pressed her palms against the table. "I thought I know what you thought I said, that I was an obligation to manage a burden to hide, but I was the reason that house, that company, even that dinner existed." She sank into the chair, tears spilling freely now. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know. I believe that I said closing the ledger. That's exactly the problem." Her sobs filled the small kitchen, raw and unguarded. I sat in silence, letting her grief settle into the room like smoke that could not yet clear. 3 weeks later, the letter came, thin paper, official seal. Leora's eviction was confirmed. I didn't need to read it to know what it said. Eleni had already called to make sure I understood the process. 30 days to vacate. When I saw her again, she wasn't the daughter who had hosted polished dinners and wore silk dresses. She stood at my door in jeans and an oversized sweater, her shoulders small, her hands trembling. "Matteo's gone," she said quietly. "He blames me for everything. Says he can't live with someone who built our life on lies." I kept my voice calm. "He's not wrong to want honesty." "I didn't lie," she said, but her eyes lowered almost immediately. "I just didn't ask enough questions." She rubbed her arms the same way she used to when she was a child trying to hide from the truth. "I found a sublet near the river. Tiny place, 1 bedroom, but I can manage." "That's a start," I said. "I got a job," she added quickly, searching my face for approval, "at a bakery on River Street. Night shifts, cleaning mostly. It's hard work." Her voice cracked on the last word. I handed her a glass of water, and she took it with both hands. "The children," I asked. "With Matteo's parents for now," she whispered. "They don't want to move them again until I have something stable." The quiet stretched between us. It wasn't cold anymore. It was heavy, honest. For the first time in years, Leora didn't fill silence with excuses. "I didn't know," she said, finally, "how hard life feels when you're on your own. You carried all of this for me." I nodded, but didn't touch her. "And now you'll carry it yourself. That's the only way it becomes real." After she left, I sat by the window and watched the river from a distance, its slow current reflecting a soft winter light. I thought about the women at the shelter where I'd begun volunteering, mothers, daughters, all of them learning that survival doesn't start with pity. It starts with boundaries. And maybe I thought Leora was finally beginning her own lesson in both. By the time spring rolled back into Savannah, the air smelled like magnolia again. I was pruning the roses when the phone rang. Mom Leora's voice came through steadier than I remembered. I kept the bakery job. I even got a raise, just a small one, but enough to make a difference. Her tone wasn't desperate anymore. It carried something new, quiet pride. "That's good to hear," I said, brushing soil from my palms. "I've been saving," she continued. "I put down a deposit on a studio. It's tiny, but it's mine. I was hoping I could stop by today, if that's okay." I hesitated for only a moment before answering. "Come after lunch." When she arrived, she looked older, somehow less polished, more human. She wore her work uniform and carried a small brown envelope. I invited her to sit on the porch where the light hit soft through the trees. She placed the envelope on the table between us. "It isn't much," she said, "but it's my first repayment. $20. I know it doesn't come close to what you did, but I need to start." I looked at the envelope without touching it. "You don't owe me money, Leora." "I do," she said firmly. "Not for the rent or the food. For the years I thought I was above needing you. For how I spoke to you that night." Her eyes didn't flinch this time. There was no performance, no manipulation, just a woman trying to rebuild something she had burned down herself. I pushed the envelope back toward her. "Keep it. Use it for something that reminds you of what you're capable of now." Tears welled up, but she didn't let them fall. She nodded and tucked the envelope back into her pocket. I poured tea for both of us. The silence between us wasn't strained anymore. It was cautious, tentative, but real. She sipped quietly, looking out at the blooming yard. "The smell of these roses," she said softly. "It feels like childhood again." I smiled. "That's because you're finally stopping long enough to notice." We didn't hug when she left. We didn't need to. For the first time, her footsteps down my porch sounded steady, no longer the shuffle of a child, but the stride of someone learning how to stand. A year can change more than time ever promises. On the next Christmas Eve, I stood outside a narrow apartment building on the south end of Savannah, holding a small box of cookies and a knot of nerves. The hallway smelled of cinnamon and floor polish. When the door opened, Leora stood there wearing an apron dusted with flour and a shy smile. "Come in, Mom," she said softly. "Dinner's almost ready." Inside the table was small, bare wood, no lace or silver, but it was warm. 2 candles flickered beside mismatched plates. Naya and Hugo rushed to hug me, their laughter as bright as bells. I hadn't heard that sound in far too long. Leora guided me to a chair. "I know it's not much," she murmured, "but I wanted this to be ours. No pretending this time." "It's perfect," I told her. And I meant it. She brought out a roast chicken golden, but modest, and a bowl of mashed potatoes. There were no servants, no guests, no spectacle, just family, and the smell of real food cooked with care. When everyone sat down, Leora paused and looked at me. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up the serving spoon. "Mom, she said I'd like you to take the first plate." For a moment, no one spoke. Naya grinned and Hugo clapped his hands. I reached for the spoon and served myself steady and slow. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was full, like something repaired. As we ate, I noticed a small brass lamp near the window, glowing softly against the night. Its base was engraved with careful letters, "Built by respect, kept by choice." Leora caught me looking. "A woman at the market makes them," she explained. "I saved up for it. Thought it might remind me of where everything began." I touched the lamp gently, feeling the warmth spread through my fingertips. "It does," I said. When dinner ended, the children cleared the table while Leora poured tea. She sat across from me. No apologies this time, no grand gestures, just quiet understanding. The brass light reflected in her eyes, steady earned and real. For the first time in years, I was part of a table built on truth, not obligation. Outside, the city glowed faintly, and for once, I didn't feel like an outsider looking in.